Aha! Hi everybody, my name is Bobby Sanabria. Welcome to this week's Percussion Discussion at the place to be, the BMHC, the Bronx Music Heritage Center. As you well know, I am the co-artistic director of the Bronx Music Heritage Center, along with the lovely Elena Martinez. So we're always glad to do these instructional videos in a small format, shortened format, so that you can learn a little bit about the great music traditions that occur here in the Bronx, the borough of music, where Dr. Mark Nason, the head of African American Studies at Fordham University, has so beautifully said, in no other place in the United States have more forms of music been nurtured than in the Bronx, particularly the South Bronx. And we're talking about various forms of music. Obviously, we're talking about what we call salsa today, or Cuban music played with a New York-Rican attitude. And one of the styles in what we call salsa today that make up the genre is the cha-cha-cha, okay? Part of the canon of Afro-Cuban based dance music. And cha-cha-cha is very important because, believe it or not, the roots of rock and roll go back to this style of rhythm and music and all that it entails. Now, the cha-cha-cha was invented around 1949. It started to be developed in 1949, but by 1951 it crystallized into what it became by the great violinist from Cuba, from La Habana, Cuba, Enrique Jorin, that you're seeing on the screen right now. He played with a group called Orquesta Las Americas, a great charanga orchestra. If you remember from our previous percussion discussion on the elegant danzón and how you play it on the timbales, a charanga is what? A Cuban band with flutes and violins, okay? Now, Enrique Jorin, okay, developed this style of music based off of two things. Off a style of music from Spain called chotis, that has humorous anecdotal lyrics, and it's mostly in a major key, okay? Because a group toured Cuba in the mid-1940s from Spain called Los Bocheros de España, that you're seeing on the screen right now. Now, the style of music, the chotis, as I said, is very humorous, anecdotal, funny stories, etc., etc. He took that style and he added this kind of rhythm that you heard me playing on the timbales just now. But the root of it is, and as you well know, as I've said before, nothing is born in a vacuum. The root of it is the danzón de nuevo ritmo that was developed in the 1930s, in the mid-1930s, or actually the mid to late 1930s, by a great group called Arsenio Rodr&iacute y sus maravillas. And Arsenio Rodr&iacute, great flute player, you're seeing him right now on the screen. Okay, he had in his charanga orchestra the great Israel Cachao Lopez, who you're seeing right now on the screen. The genius, the man who modernized the Cuban bass and the repetitive patterns that are played by the bass called timbales. Now, up until then, the style of music known as danzón, which is very elegant and it has this basic cadence to it. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that basic syncopated cadence that's very elegant, majestic, as we talked about before in the previous percussion discussion when I talked about the danzón, showed you how to play it on the timbales. Check that out if you haven't seen it yet. It's in the archives on the FB page that we have at the BMHC. In any case, that music up until then was all what we call through composed. There was no improvisation. It was all written out like classical music. But Israel Cachao Lopez knew that Arsenio Rodr&iacute, the flute player, the leader of Arsenio Rodr&iacute y sus maravillas, was a great improviser, and he also was inspired by the great Arsenio Rodriguez, who you're seeing on the screen right now. Arsenio Rodriguez developed what was known as the son montuno, a modernization of the song the Cuban folk song tradition for Eastern Cuba. What's special about the son montuno? Well, first of all, what did Arsenio do? Well, he played the Cuban mandolin known as the tres. He was from Matanzas, Cuba. Without him, we don't have salsa today. In any case, he modernized the song, this folk song tradition. Before Arsenio, you just had a guitar, and the tres, the instrument Arsenio played, the mandolin instrument of Cuba, 3 sets of double strings. And bongo, vocals, lead singer sonero or sonera if it's a woman, playing maracas and or guiro. I'm sorry, playing claves, and then the segunda voice, the second voice, would play the maracas. So the first voice, the sonero or sonera if it's a woman, would play the claves, the sticks, tapping out that rhythm that you heard me tapping out before. And then the segunda voice would harmonize and play maracas and or guiro. Well, and one lone trumpet, playing ad libitum. And it was all nothing written down, it was all ad lib. And a bongo, as I said before. Well, Arsenio does 3 important things. He adds the conga to this type of group. Can you imagine salsa today without a conga drum? Okay. Then he replaces the guitar eventually with the piano. Lili Martinez, who you're going to see on the screen right now. Lili, okay, you consider him the first salsa piano player. Every piano player that plays today in Cuban-based music, or what we call salsa today, his or her roots go back to the great Lili Martinez, who was from Santiago, Cuba. He knew the song real well because he was born and raised in the eastern part of Cuba where the song was born. Okay, and the third thing Arsenio does is he adds multiple trumpets. He replaces the concept of just one trumpet, now with 2 trumpets, 3 trumpets, sometimes 4 trumpets, all playing interlocking lines, mambo, horn lines, all intersecting at the clave. Let me give you an example. Mambo, 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 que rico y a mi mambo, 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 que mambo, 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 mambo. Now imagine all that happening at the same time, and on top of that, somebody is soloing. Wow, fantastic, right? Now, where would they solo? They would solo in what the section of the song, after the song is sung, a section called the montuno, or el montuno in Spanish. And what does it mean? Well, the word montuno comes from the Spanish word montura, the saddle of a horse. So you're riding on a saddle of chords. It could be just 1 chord, it could be 2 chords, 3 chords, 4 chords, repeating over and over again. And then you have a coro, background vocals, and repeating over and over again. And then the sonero or sonera improvising, right, with their voice in rhythmic poetry in clave, or one of the musicians soloing. So it's very important that you remember that word if you've never heard it before. Montuno. That's the get down part, as hip hoppers would say in the music. The get down is where the drums and bass and everything are churning along, and everybody's getting down and busy with the music, dancing. Well, in Cuban-based music, the montuno is where we get down. Okay, but up until then, in charanga orchestras playing the elegant danzón, this elegant rhythm that I played for you before, it's slow and elegant. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There was no improvisation because it was all through composed. But in Antonio Arcaño's band is Israel Cachao Lopez, the great bass player who you're seeing on the screen right now. In any case, he goes to Antonio Arcaño and he tells him, hey, check out what Arsenio is doing with his group, the great tres player Arsenio Rodr&iacute, who's modernized the song with his creation, the son montuno. They're really improvising, getting down and everything, and we just play these elegant dance songs. We don't get to improvise or anything like that. So, and one of the reasons they got to see that group, Arsenio Rodriguez's conjunto, and a conjunto is just a Cuban group with bass, piano, very important, congas. Arsenio adds the conga drum. He's the first to really add the conga to and make it a permanent part of a band. He adds the piano, kind of replacing the guitar with the piano. Lili Martinez being his first piano player. And Lili knew the song tradition from Eastern Cuba very well, so he could apply all that to the piano. Arsenio's on the tres, the mandolin instrument of Cuba, that he was a virtuoso of, 3 sets of double strings. And then you have the sonero, who plays the clave and sings the lead, or sonera if it's a woman. Segunda voz, who does the harmonies, plays maraca and or guiro. And 1 ad libitum trumpet. Arsenio adds the piano, he adds the conga, and instead of just 1 trumpet playing ad libitum, he adds multiple trumpets, all doing horn lines, all at the same time, as I talked about before. So, okay, those are the 3 innovations that Arsenio does. They had the same manager, Arsenio Rodriguez's conjunto, his group, okay, and Antonio Arcaño and his Maravillas. They both had the same manager, so they will be booked at the same time at gigs a lot of times. And so that influences Cachao, who freaks out and he goes to, approaches Antonio Arcaño and tells him, hey, we got to do the same thing. So before then, the Charanga orchestras, they just had the Guiro, this instrument, it's the scraping instrument, the Guiro macho, and the timbales. What happens? They decide to add a conga drum. So Antonio Arcaño's Maravillas is the first Charanga orchestra to add a conga drum to their rhythmic complex. Remember, in a conjunto like Arsenio's, you have the conga drum, the bass, the piano, the tres, and you have also the bongo. Okay, that's the percussion and rhythm section. But in Charanga, there's no bongo. You just have timbales, guiro, and the conga, as developed by Antonio Arcaño y sus Maravillas. Okay, so now, what does Israel Cachao Lopez do? He starts composing songs so that the musicians can improvise. They start off playing the elegant danzón rhythm, and then they go to a montuno, the vamp section, montuno, M-O-N-T-U-N-O, where the musicians get to improvise. Remember, the word montuno comes from the word montura, which means the saddle of a horse. So they're riding on a saddle of cords so they can improvise, just like Arsenio Rodriguez was doing in his conjunto. But now they're doing it in the Charanga orchestra. So to do that, they switch from this rhythm that I played before, the baqueteo, that march-like syncopated rhythm that I played before on the skin of the hembra, the large timbale, and Ulpiano Diaz, the timbalero, for Antonio Arcaño y sus Maravillas. He switches to a small bell mounted just like this, as you saw me doing before, like this. Now watch what I'm doing. The bell, I'm muffling it by putting my forefinger on top of the stick and slightly pressing. I don't want this. I want this. Go, 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 go. Okay? To get that nice dry dead sound. With my left hand, I'm doing what we call el sobado or el sobao. Okay? Comes from the word sobar, which means to rub in Spanish. So I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Okay? So I have the stick underneath my palm, holding it with my thumb. And I just muffled on beat 2. 1, 2. On beat 4, these 3 fingers close, open up my thumb, they hold the stick. This finger is pointing up, the pointing finger, the index finger, and I strike. My bottom of my palm remains on the rim of the drum, and I get the characteristic open note. open note on a bass, on a string, or the open note of a conga drum. Watch my hand again. I muffle on beat 2, and I strike on beat 4, like that. Okay, so it looks like my hand is forming like the shape of a pistol. Okay, again, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1. A nice open tone. Okay, so this is what is played in Israel Cachao's new creation that he calls danzón de nuevo ritmo, danzón of new rhythm, or danzón mambo. And what Enrique Jorin does, the inventor of the cha-cha-cha, he starts in 1949. He takes that rhythm, and by 1951, he's already codified what he calls the cha-cha-cha, which is the rhythm that you hear me doing right now. Okay, now this is the basic way to play this. Okay, now let me show you how the guiro functions to accompany this. Remember, this is the most basic way to do this. There are other ways to do this that have developed over the years with timbaleros, but this is the most basic way. We'll come back in a second to talk about the guiro. Aha! All right, this is the characteristic instrument that has to be played in any cha-cha-cha to make it sound like a real cha-cha-cha. This is what we call the guiro, otherwise known as guiro macho. Yes, that was the original name of this instrument in Cuba, guiro macho. Why? To distinguish it from this instrument. Guiro hembra, which is a different type of gourded instrument. Remember, these are two types of guiros. They're both gourds. Guiro meaning gourd or calabaza, calabash, made from the gourd that grows, obviously, from Mother Earth. One has a stem, well, they both have stems on it. This one grows big, round like this, and beads are placed around it. And in Africa, this became known as shekere, or when it's very, very big, as abwe or agbe. And this, the guiro macho, to distinguish it, okay, from this guiro, which is known as guiro hembra, female, guiro macho, male, okay, for what we use in salsa orchestras today, charanga orchestras, etc., okay, conjuntos in playing Cuban-based music, okay? But most people just call it guiro, okay? But if somebody tells you, hey, there's a guiro toque this weekend, you know that they're referring to this instrument because in that style of music, which is used in the Afro-Cuban based religion known as Santeria, that comes from the mighty Yoruba people in West Africa, this instrument, the guiro hembra, is utilized in a guiro toque, okay, in a ceremony involving guiros, okay? So, but as you well know, as I said before, this is called also, obviously, shekere, a combination of a shaker and a drum. Okay. But we're talking about the guiro as it is utilized in the cha-cha-cha. Okay, so you saw me playing the rhythm. I'm using this, which is known as a puya. Okay, puya, which means to jab in Spanish. You can spell P-U-Y-A or P-U-L-L-A, puya. Okay, we place our thumb on the shaft of the stick, this finger, the forefinger, on the shaft. Why? Because it gives you a more relaxed feeling, because if you extend your finger like this, these tendons tend to relax a little bit more, okay? You'll be also to get more articulation out of the guiro. If you play like this, okay, you tend to squeeze harder and you'll get tired faster, and these tendons tend to contract, okay? So try to remember the position right here, just like this. Great. Now, If you were noticing, this is just a one-bar pattern, just like the one-bar pattern with the cowbell on the timbales, the small little bell here. Okay? Now, you always hold the guiro with the mouth, this part, la boca, pointing up. Not like this, like this. In the old days, when artisans would cut this down and cut the notches into it, they would put a square here, an open square, and just hold it like this. But most guiros, we buy them in music stores if they're the natural instrument like this, or even a plastic replacement for this, a fiberglass replacement for it. They have holding receptacles for your fingers. Okay? So, right? So it's basically just 4 strokes. 1 and 2 and. Okay? So the first 2 strokes are 1 and together. Top going to down. 1 and then the same thing as here. Down, up, 2 and. 1 and 2 and. But the 2 and is separated. 1 and 2 and then 3 and is the same thing. 3 and then 4 and is. So it's basically those 4 strokes repeated twice. That's all it is. Again, really, really slow. And I'll tap quarter notes here. Slower than that. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now, if you're noticing, with my left hand, I'm going up and down. The basic general rule of thumb when playing the guiro macho or the guiro that we use in a dance orchestra is that for every downstroke, you do an equal and opposite upstroke. You don't want to do this. It defeats the purpose, and you get more swing out of the sound of the instrument, more sabor, more flavor when you move your hands in the opposite direction. And you'll be able to do that naturally as you do. Don't try not to think about it too much. The only time it would remain stationary is, say I had this with a clamp on it and attached it to a cymbal stand or whatever. If I was playing multiple percussion, that way I could play the guiro with one hand, and with my other hand free, I could play other instruments, like the congas, etc. So, again, watch my left hand. I'm going to do this very slowly. And 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Down, up, down, down, up, down, up. Together, separated. Together, separated. Together, separated. Together, separated. Remember, for every downstroke, I go at the opposite upstroke. I go for every upstroke, I do an equal and opposite downstroke. So the first 2 notes, see how I'm doing them? I'm going to straight up. See how that's happening? And then the separated notes, it's always down, up, down, up. Again, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Try to imagine you're doing this. Down, up, with your hands with sticks. Okay? It's exactly the same thing you're doing. And if you're a percussionist, drummer, obviously that's going to strengthen the way you play eventually your single stroke rolls. Because you're making this motion with the same time of motion. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down. What's giving it the characteristic sound is the first 2 notes are together and the second 2 notes are separated. Okay, and then you just repeat it again. Down, up, down, up. Together, separated. Together, separated. Okay? In terms of using classical musical terms, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and legato, marcato, legato, marcato, legato, marcato, legato, marcato. Now you notice this stick is made out of fiberglass. In the old days, we used to take a thinner timbale stick, something thinner than this, like a wooden dowel, cut it, and use that. Some people would use a palo de guayaba, from the guayaba fruit in Cuba. The stem of that is very hard. Cut that in small pieces and use that. Okay, but people in New York City discovered when in Chinese restaurants they started making fiberglass chopsticks. The musicians, the percussionists, started saying, wow, I could use this as a puya, okay, to scrape the guiro, puya, okay. This is the puya, this is the guiro, puya, guiro, okay. And they started doing that, utilizing that, and then eventually people started going to body shops and having body shops make cut fiberglass rods like this, and eventually the percussion manufacturers, mainly Latin Percussion Incorporated, started mass marketing these and making them for us. But in the old days, it wasn't like that. This gives you a brighter sound, etc. Because it's fiberglass plastic, it glides like butter on the guiro, etc. Now the position of the stick, the last 1/3 of the stick, and remember the forefinger on top of the stick, and you'll be able to play the basic pattern for the cha-cha-cha. You don't have to worry about the clave direction because it's what we call clave neutral, clave neutral. Since it's a 1-bar pattern, it fits either side of the clave. For example, in 3/2. In 2/3. Same pattern. Okay, so that's the basic pattern for the cha-cha-cha on the guiro macho or guiro. Now, there are other patterns that the guiro plays depending on the style of the music. This pattern can also be used in the son tradition or the son montuno tradition. In those traditions, mainly you use the maracas, but the guiro can be utilized as a substitute for the maracas in those traditions too. Even for the mambo too, which is excuse me, obviously faster. For example, here's a classic mambo. Harina, azúcar, manteca, harina, azúcar, manteca. So now we're going to come back on the third part of this to show you the basic pattern is utilized with the conga drums in the cha-cha-cha. Hi everybody, have no fear, it's still me. Even though I got a different shirt and a different pair of pants. This is Bobby Sanabria for the BMHC. This is part 3 of our lesson on the cha-cha-cha here at the BMHC, the Bronx Music Heritage Center. This is Percussion Discussion. In part 1, we gave a little bit of the history of the cha-cha-cha, who created it, Enrique Jorin, and the basic rhythm you play on the timbales. Part 2, the basic pattern on the guiro, the scraping instrument. And now, in part 3, we're going to talk about what the conga drum does in the cha-cha-cha. Okay, now, I'm just going to use one drum, so I'm going to move this drum over here to the side. Because in traditional cha-cha-cha, when it first developed, only one conga drum was used. From the influence of the great Arsenio Rodr&iacute, the great blind virtuoso of the Cuban mandolin, the tres, we talked about that before. It's a guitar with 3 sets of double strings. He was from Matanzas, Cuba, and he was blind. He was a black man of Congo, Bantu Congo descent, and they used to call him the blind marvel, el ciego maravilloso. And as we said before, without him, there's no salsa today. And he was the first band leader to add the conga drum as a permanent part of the dance band format. And he had a conjunto, 2 trumpets, conga and bongo, bass, piano, a lead singer, the sonero or the sonera if it's a woman, and that person would play the clave, and the segunda voz would do harmonies, and they would play the maracas and or the guiro and two trumpets. That's a conjunto. In the charanga orchestra, what we talked about before, Antonio Arcaño, the great flautist, and his group Sus Maravillas, Antonio Arcaño Sus Maravillas. It's a charanga orchestra. What's a charanga if you remember? What? Flute and violins. But the percussion is different slightly. There's timbales, there's the guiro, and then because of the influence of Arsenio, they added the conga drum. And the first conga player in a charanga orchestra was Rogelio Terran with Antonio Arcaño Sus Maravillas. They used to call him El Colorado because his skin was bright red. Okay, so here's one of the patterns, or the most basic pattern that Rogelio would play on the conga drum, which is a basic pattern that they, in Arsenio's band, they would use. So, check it out. I'm going to do it in context. You hear the bell of the timbales, all right? First, the pattern all by itself. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the bell of the timbales. Some variation. Just a little variation there, all right? But the basic pattern is this. Palm, tip, slap, tip, palm, tip, open, open, palm, tip, slap, tip, palm, tip, open, open, palm, tip, slap, tip, palm, tip, open. You notice it's a one-bar pattern. I'm not going to get into the technique, etc., of the conga drum. We did that way back when in the first percussion discussion, so refer to that way back when. Okay, it's a one-bar pattern, you'll notice. Just one bar, again. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So it's clave neutral. It doesn't matter if the clave is 3-2. Or 2-3. It fits both sides, okay? Just like the one-bar pattern, the basic pattern that the timbales play in the cha-cha-cha, and there's a one-bar pattern that the Guiro plays as well, okay? So, how would this sound in context, all three instruments? The Guiro, the bell of the timbales, and the basic tumbao, T-U-M-B-A, or the repetitive patterns played on the bass, the conga, and the piano. This basic one-bar tumbao. How would that sound like with the Guiro and the bell of the timbales? Well, let me see if I can do this without hurting myself. So we have the bell of the timbales, the Guiro, and the tumbao of the congas. That's a break. That's what we would call in Afro-Cuban based music, or salsa, Afro-Cuban based dance music, a cierre, C-I-E-R-R-E. Okay? It comes from the Spanish word cerrar, to close, or cerrado, closed. You're closing off the time and you're doing a break, and everybody does that break in unison together. There are many different kinds of cierres. They are used for effects in arrangements, etc. Arsenio was a master at them, incorporating them into his arrangements, and so that influenced Antonio Arsenio and his group, Arsenio Rodr&iacute Maravillas, his Charanga orchestra, to do them as well. Remember, a charanga is what? A Cuban band with flute and violins. It has timbales, guiro, okay, and conga. A conjunto, what Arsenio had, is conga, bongo, no timbales. The lead voice, the sonero or sonera if it's a woman, plays the clave. The segunda voice plays the maracas and or the guiro. Okay, so again, charanga, timbales, conga, guiro, conjunto, what Arsenio had, conga, bongo, clave, and maracas, and or guiro. And of course, a conjunto also has what? At least 2 trumpets, at least. Okay? So the conjunto has brass, the charanga has flute and violins, if you want to remember it in an easy kind of way. Okay, so that's the basic 1-bar pattern on the conga. Right? Then we get two congas. And again, who is the first conga player in a charanga orchestra? Well, Rogelio Terran with Arsenio Rodr&iacute y sus Maravillas. Rogelio Terran playing 1 drum in the mid-1930s. And they used to call him El Colorado because of his bright red skin. So he's the first conga player in a charanga orchestra. All right, the advent of Cándido Camero, who, thank God, he's still with us at the age of 99, amazing. He started playing 2 drums, then 3 drums, and even up till 6 drums as in his shows. But he's the one responsible for adding multiple drums to the conga setup. First, 1 to play 2, and then 3, etc., etc. Well, here's a basic tumbao that you can play for the cha-cha-cha. It's an old school tumbao developed by Candido and utilized and copied by others. I don't hear too many people play it nowadays, but that's because a lot of the things from the past are being lost on the younger generation. So I'm glad I'm here to share them with you. So it's a 1-bar pattern. It's clave neutral. It'll fit either side of the clave. Okay? So where you had this before, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Again, palm, tip, slap, tip, palm, tip, open, open, palm, tip, slap, tip, palm, tip, open, open. Now we're going to incorporate this drum, and it'll be playing over and over again every bar. What does it sound like? Let me play it for you first, and I'll break it down really quick. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. With the bell of the timbales, slow it down. And I'm going to use that same cierre. Ra, ta, 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 ta. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So that's the basic pattern. How do we do it? It's palm, tip, slap, open, open, tip, open, open, 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 tip, slap, open, open, tip, open. In musical terms, this comes in 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That's the basic tumbao on 2 drums for the cha-cha-cha. And it fits beautifully with the guiro and the bell of the timbales. And what does it sound like in context? Let me see you try this again and see if, again, if I don't hurt myself. We have the bell of the timbales, the guiro. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ah! Okay, so I did that cierre that I talked about before. Again, remember, that's just one example of a cierre. You're going to hear these, you hear these things all the time in contemporary salsa orchestras. They do breaks. Okay, we would call them breaks in English. Really, the real correct word is cierre, cierre, a rhythmic break, where the time stops and everybody does that at the same time. Okay, now let's go to the fourth part of this lesson on the cha-cha-cha. All right, Bobby Sanabria back for the fourth part of this percussion discussion dealing with the basics of the cha-cha-cha. Now, I'm going to show you a technique called el abanico, A-B-A-N-I-C-O. It consists of a rim shot, roll rim shot. You heard me do it in the first part when I opened up the lesson. Beat 3 is the first rim shot. Beat 4 is the roll in the middle of the drum. And beat 1 of the next measure is the downbeat. So vocalized, it will sound like this. 1, 2, da, ra. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, da, ra. Count with me. 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay? And then we go into the rhythm. So we'll wind up on beat 2 here. 1, 2, 1, 2. I'll do it again one more time. 1, 2, 1, 2. 3, 4, 1, 2. 3, 4, 1, 2. Okay, so, whoa. Anyway, how do we do this? Well, first, who developed it? Well, Arsenio Rodr&iacute, the great timbalero for Antonio Arcanio, Antonio Arcanio y sus maravillas, developed this in the mid-1930s with Antonio Arcanio's Charanga Orchestra. Arsenio Rodr&iacute was the timbalero in that band, and he also was the first to add the cowbell to the timbale setup. So we have to thank him for those two things, which are very important. This technique of the abanico, the fan, every timbalero must learn it. Every timbalero does it on any gig that they do. Okay? And you hear these types of rim shot rolls, rim shot in New Orleans drumming. But that's another story. You know, you hear that on the snare drum a lot. First of all, the rim shot. The last 1/3 of the stick. Okay? Not this. Not this. This. It's got to sound like a beautiful high note on a trumpet. The last 1/3 of the stick. Right near the edge of the rim. The roll in the middle of the drum. It's what we call a double stroke roll. Now, when Arsenio Rodr&iacute developed this technique, sometimes he'd do it with buzzes like this, like the way Maestro Tito Puente would do his abanicos. Other timbaleros would do it one-handed, like Manny Oquendo, the great Manny Oquendo, like this. 1, 2, like that. But today, the accepted technique is double stroke rolls. Okay? Measured double stroke rolls. What do we mean by that? If in case you don't know what I'm talking about. For the drummers out there or anybody who has some training on the snare drum, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But this is an open, long roll. I'm going to close it. You notice I'm going right, right, left, left, right, right, left. Mama, daddy, mama, daddy. I'm going to close it slightly. I could go faster, open it, etc. And this is what you need to practice if you've never done this before. Okay, we have measured rolls, a 5-stroke roll. Right, right, left, left, right. Faster. Okay, you can do it left, left, right, right, left. Slow. A 7-stroke roll, left, left, right, right, left, left, right. Okay, left, left, right, right, left, left, right. A 9-stroke roll, right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right. Of course, and there's others. You keep going on and just a long roll. We do this on the drum. Obviously, we can sustain the roll for as long as we want. And we need to be able to do that because sometimes in special situations, you got to do long abanicos. Like 1, 2, Okay, so if you have never practiced that before, take a pillow, start practicing. You can watch TV, watch something like Family Guy, just sit there, zone out, and just be mama, daddy, right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left. If you have access to a good drum instructor, they can show you snare drum technique, etc., etc. Okay, so that is the basic technique of the abanico. Now we have different types of abanicos. Like for example, a syncopated abanico that hits with the 3 sides of the clave. What am I talking about? 1, 4, 1, 2. 4, 1, 2. 4, 1, 2. Okay. The abanico that I was just doing, it's unsyncopated. We would use it basically for cha-cha-cha. But if we're doing the abanico in a context like a faster tempo, like I was just doing for mambo tempo, etc., we would have to align with the clave. So we use that unsyncopated one. How does it align with the clave? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. 3, 4, 1, 2. 4, 1, 2. And if you notice, I was doing a 7-stroke roll there. Okay, so these are techniques that you really have to learn. In a future percussion discussion, we're really going to break down abanicos and how you use them in different contexts, in different styles of Cuban music. But the basic one we use is the unsyncopated one for the cha-cha-cha. We hope you enjoyed this, but as a bonus, I'm going to show you 2 more things. Here's another pattern you can use in cha-cha-cha. Remember, there are different ways of playing any type of rhythm, and here's one of them in terms of the cha-cha-cha. Instead of me going like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, I can do this. In context with the abanico, 1, 2, 1, 2. Gives a little bit more drive to the rhythm, a little bit more hipness to it, etc. A little bit more syncopation. And if you're playing in a big band context, okay, you would obviously need to use, we could use the, oops, we could use the small bell. Whoa, we could use the small bell, but in a big band contest, many times we use the large bell, okay, of the timbales, what we call the mambo bell. Why? Because the quarter notes would be played by the bongo player who holds a large bell called a cencerro. Okay? So they're doing the quarter notes. So I would play like this. So, the first rhythm, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and you noticed that I used a different kind of abanico there, placing the rim shot, the first rim shot, in a different part of the beat. We'll get into all of those types of things when we do a whole percussion discussion just on abanicos. All right? So for percussion discussion, we hope you enjoyed this little tutorial on the cha-cha-cha. If you have any comments or questions, make sure you put them in the comment box, and I'll be sure to answer all of them. Remember that percussion discussion will only be once a month, starting next month. In August, we have all these other things that we're going to be offering you at the BMHC, Bronx Music Heritage Center, Facebook page. For the Bronx Music Heritage Center, the BMHC, the place to be, my name is Bobby Sanabria, and we want to thank the great Elena Martinez, my co-artistic director. We'll see you sooner than later. Aha! Now, you're going to get to see see me playing with the Tito Puente Orchestra, playing timbales at the Apollo Theater in 1994. See if you can hear the different abanicos that I use in this cha-cha-cha called I, Jose, backing up the great Graciela at the Apollo Theater. And why was I playing timbales? Because Maestro Puente had to do a costume change. I was playing the drum set, and he said, Bobby, come down and accompany Graciela. See you on the next percussion discussion. All right? Bye-bye.